Whoa, second cup of tea, because I spent the first cup of tea getting this ready. What's up, guys? Welcome to a studio episode. The first studio episode, actually, first formal studio episodes. I've done other ones inside, but new studio being built, still in progress, long way to go. However, I can't wait. I can't wait till it's done. I gotta make videos. So I think I've got it looking good enough for now. Still a little bit of an echo going on. I'm gonna deal with that too, and the lighting and everything. But I've got it good enough. And I went birding this morning, and I go birding most mornings. And as happens maybe more often than not, especially if you live in foresty areas, which I really don't. I live in New Mexico, so lots of sunshine. However, sometimes you get in the trees, sometimes there's shade. More often than not, you're shooting at a higher ISO than you probably want to, especially with these long focal lengths. And the biggest question I get asked a lot is, how do I reduce the noise, or how do I get these clean looking images even if I have to shoot at high ISOs? And this is how I do it. There's a lot of ways to do noise reduction and sharpening techniques, and I may go over some of those other ones, but I'm gonna go over the one that I use the most. And it's pretty simple, but you do need Photoshop. So let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop, and I'll show you my process for noise reduction for wildlife images. And you could use this for anything, not just wildlife. Anytime you have high ISO, this works pretty well for most subjects. But this is definitely a wildlife thing, wildlife tutorial. So let's get into it. All right, so here's an image that I shot the other day. And if we zoom into 100%, we are at ISO 5000. So if we zoom in, we can see this is at 100%. That's pretty noisy. And I'm shooting this with the Canon 5D Mark IV, which I'm generally happy with shooting up to 6400 ISO, especially knowing that I can do noise reduction techniques. But let's go ahead and open this up. I've already done some basic tweaking here in Camera Raw, and I'm happy with that. So let's go ahead and open this up. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do, and this is all subjective, of course, but I'm gonna crop the crap out of this because I want to. So I'm gonna go to a square crop, and you know, when you crop and you're losing resolution and all of that stuff, it's definitely going to increase the noise or increase the perception of the noise. All right, so if we zoom in here even more, we can really see all of this noise. So that is a lot of noise. So instead of doing it in Camera Raw, which you can, or Lightroom or whatever, and just doing the global denoising, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new layer by hitting Control J. So that's gonna give me my new layer here. And then I'm going to hit Control Shift A, and that will bring up this JPEG in Camera Raw. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here to the noise, and I'm gonna reduce it way more than you normally would for just noise reduction. So somewhere in the 60s, usually good, 50s, 60s, maybe even 70s. So now that I did that, we're zoomed in pretty tight here. There's 100% zoom. So let's turn this on and off. So you should be able to see a pretty big difference. Let's zoom in even more. So now you can see 200%. And there's the noise reduction. So obviously the downside is, though, we don't want that on our subject. So this is why we created a new layer. So now I'm going to go down here to the mask, and I'm going to add a mask to that layer, and basically I'm going to paint out the subject. So that's pretty simple. All I'm going to do is hit B for my brush tool, And I'm going to go ahead and leave my opacity at 100%, flow at 100%. You can change those down if you want to slowly do this. So the first areas that I'm going to hit are the eyes, and we're going to make sure we're painting with black. So I'm just going to paint in the eyes, and then I'm going to paint in the beak, because we want the edges of that beak sharp. I want the edges sharp around here, and the edges of his wing. And then I want a little bit of this tree, because the focal plane hits the tree, and I want the tree to be sharp too. So I'm going to hit that and paint that back in. And then I'm going to paint in a little bit on the edge of these feathers here, and his little leg there. You can be more broad about this too. You can just paint over the whole thing if you want. Sometimes if your subject has really dark parts of it, like this does in this case, some of those dark areas are going to have more noise. Or if you've underexposed and then brought the exposure up, then even some of the midtones and the highlights can have more noise in that case too. So now we can see our mask painted there, and if we go ahead and turn this on and off, we will see the noise around the bird there. So that's basically it. That's how I do it. The one thing is that is going to leave, this isn't a perfect solution, and if you're printing, like big prints and stuff like that, this might not be the best technique to do that for, or at least what I'm going to do next. So what I do is I do that, and this is, since I post largely on Instagram and social media and stuff like that, what I do is I make a separate, so I usually save this, and just go ahead and save it as an image. And then I'll go into image size. So this is what I like to do to sharpen an image for social media, is I like to put it down to 1080 as my width, and then I hit OK, and what that does is that naturally sharpens the image. So that will, but it'll sharpen everything. So you can do that noise reduction before or after this. It's your choice. If you do it after that, then you'll have, it won't have resharpened anything that you just blurred. So I'm happy with that. Let's check out one more image that's maybe a slightly better shot. All right, so here's another one. This is zoomed in to 100%, so you can see the bird's nice and in focus. We're at 3200 ISO, but there's a lot of dark in this image over here with these trees in the foreground, and the bird himself is real dark. So if I were to just go in here and go to noise reduction, and for 3200 on my 5D4, without it looking too mushy, if you slide this all the way up, it's just going to look like a painting. That looks nice and soft and mushy and horrible for photographic purposes. So normally if I were to just do an overall noise reduction, especially if I have like an astro shot or something like that for this height, for this ISO level, I'm going to bring this down. I'm probably going to do somewhere around 15 to 20. And that's going to give me a good balance between reducing the heavy noise and still retaining detail in an overall shot. But again, this is wildlife oriented, and I don't want my subject looking mushy or painty or soft or whatever. So that's why we're doing this whole technique. So I'm not going to do that at all. I'm just going to leave the noise reduction, and I'm going to do it like we have it in the last one. So here again, I'm going to crop, because I wasn't close enough for how I want, and that's my choice. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit. And in doing that, of course, we are going to exaggerate the noise quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and get that eye right on that third for nice compositional purposes. And I'm happy with that. So we can really see the noise now that we've cropped in. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Control J for my new copy. And then we're going to go Control Shift A, and we're going to bring in that camera raw. And now we're going to go back to that noise and just crank it. This one I'm going to do a little bit higher because the dark areas were pretty bad. So you can see that cleaned up, that tree and the background pretty nicely. So now we're going to go ahead and make our layer mask. Click B for brush. And we're going to paint this bad boy's detail right back in. Alright, so I'm happy with that. Now let's just go ahead and resize. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit more. But the cool thing is I have my mask there, so it didn't affect any of the parts that I blocked out for the mask. So it just made that background even softer. Alright, so that was it. Like I said, it's a super simple technique, and again, it's not perfect, but for largely doing, the social medias, the Facebooks, that kind of thing, the Instagrams, it's where I live mostly with this kind of stuff. It works wonders, and it looks great, and it's a great way to clean those backgrounds up. Even if you're shooting at less of an ISO and you have it lower, sometimes you can still get a little bit of noise, especially depending on your camera and your lens and all of that stuff. So I still do it even with stuff like this, which is ISO 1600, and it's really not that high. The background's really clean, everything's really clean, but I still did it anyways just to clean it up even more and just to really blow that background out. So another reason I still do this even at lower ISOs and everything is because it really helps to emphasize that background blur. So if you have a lens and camera combo or whatever that is not really as great for blurring out the background, maybe you don't have that high of a max aperture, something like that, then this will really help even at lower ISOs, because it will help emphasize that blur and it'll reduce the overall clarity of the background and blur it out even better. So even on stuff like this, which is a really clean image, I still did it anyways because it just cleans it up even more and just really makes that background blur pop, I guess. You know what I mean? It just really makes it stand out and blurs it just a little bit more. So I really like that effect. It's something that I think that looks pretty good, especially on the internet. All right, that's it. I'm gonna get back to fixing up my studio some more. I still got quite a ways to go. So if you guys have any comments on anything that I did or didn't do concerning this noise reduction technique and all of that stuff in Photoshop, leave those in the comments below and I will definitely answer them. Hit that like button if this video helped you out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've got new videos every week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Where the heck? Oh, I thought I lost my tea. That would have been bad.